loves, welcome back to another week of Kika's online church service. I hope you've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it. If you got any prayer requests, comments, or questions, drop that down below. Enjoy.
I thank you for this time. I pray that we can make the best out of quarantine, and I pray that we can stay positive and draw near to you, God. I pray that we can try to strive and keep the relationships that we have among each other, and try to strengthen ourselves when it feels like we don't have much besides you to go to, God. I pray that we can try to love life still, because there's still good that you have for us in this world. And I pray that we can keep looking for what you have in our future, and that we can remain positive. And I bless Kika's message, and I hope that you speak through him. Amen.
Fullness of eternal promise, stirring in your sons and daughters, earth revealing heaven's wonders. Spirit come, Spirit come. What you spoke is now unfolding. All your children shall behold it. Dreams awaken in this moment. Spirit come, Spirit come. Pour it out, let your love run over. Here and now, let your glory fill this house. Pour it out, let your love run over. Here and now, let your glory fill this house. Now the world awaits your presence, and this power is within us. We will rise to be your witness. Spirit come, Spirit come. Pour it out, let your love run over. Here and now, let your glory fill this house. Pour it out, let your love run over. Here and now, let your glory fill this house. Tongues of fire, testifying of the Son, one desire. Spirit come, speak revival. Prophesy like it is done, one desire. Spirit come, Spirit come. come, Spirit come, Spirit come, Spirit come, pour it out, let your love run over, here and now, let your glory fill this house, pour it out, let your love run over, here and now, let your glory fill this house.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Arabic youth service on Sunday, and we're so pumped that you're here. And I just want to let you guys know that just for the past couple of weeks, every Wednesday, the youth leaders team has been praying for you guys, praying for every single one of you, and praying that God would continue to work in your lives and in your hearts, even through quarantine. And we know that God has already done some really awesome stuff in your lives, and it's so cool to see how much you've grown. And for those of you who have been coming on Sundays and on Fridays every week, so grateful that you're back. And for those of you who maybe are joining us for the first time today, so pumped you're here, and we are excited that you are joining us. So for the past couple of weeks, we've been going through a series called Family Feud, and we've been focusing on this aspect of family, and how family is something that God created, and we looked at what family should look like. And then in the past few weeks, this past week, we talked about what does it look like to have family conflict, and how do we respond to conflict, and how do we approach conflict in a positive way that helps us grow. And so we started by reading James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20. And so we're going to do that again. And so let's read that together.
James 1:19 and 20. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not in righteousness of God.
We're also going to read Hebrews 4:15. So let's read that together.
Hebrews 4:15. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin.
All right, thanks for reading those with us. So last week we really focused on how do I approach somebody in my family, or not even in my family, if I have an issue with them. And how do I do it in a way that's fruitful and that doesn't hurt them and that doesn't hurt me in the process. And we have these 4 steps. And if you remember these steps, that's awesome. I'm proud of you, and I hope it's been helpful to you. And these 4 steps are this. So the first one was observation without evaluation. The second step was expressing your feelings. Third step was connecting feelings to needs. And then the 4th step was asking for specific requests. And so if you don't really know exactly what those mean, the video from last week will be either in the link down below or somewhere around here, that you can go back and watch it later. But what's important for us right now to know is that those 4 things are not only important for when we go and approach somebody with an issue that we have with them, but they're actually, a lot of these same elements are the same things that we need to have when someone is approaching us with an issue that they have. And what's awesome is that, here's the thing, like if somebody doesn't know these 4 steps and they come and approach us with an issue that they have, does that mean that we can't have fruitful conversation? Thankfully not, because if we look at James 1:19 and 20, when James says be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, he's not just saying that in the context when you go and approach someone with an issue. It's an attitude that we're supposed to have no matter what the conflict is, no matter what our situation is, if we're the one who's giving the problem or if we're the one who's receiving the problem. And so we're going to use a couple of those same steps as we approach how do we receive the conflict from somebody? How do we listen to them well? So that's where we're going with that. And those 3 qualities, like we said, quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry are so important. But the question is, how then? How am I supposed to receive from somebody, maybe who's coming with me like really angry or doesn't know how to like talk and have a positive conversation, but still do it in a way that's, respond to them in a way that's healthy, respond to them in a way that really Jesus would respond to somebody. And what it comes down to is this one word that we're going to say over and over and over again today. And I'm excited for it. And this word is empathy. The word that we're going to be talking about today is empathy. And if we want to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, we have to have empathy. This is something that's a non-negotiable. And so we're going to understand that a little bit more as we go on in these next couple of minutes together. And so let's ask this question. Well, what exactly is empathy? And so here's some definitions for empathy. Empathy is respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. Respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. And here's something that I really loved while I was reading this and studying some of this. And again, this a lot of this stuff is coming from Dr. Rosenberg's book called Nonviolent Communication. If you have time to read it, oh man, it's so good. You totally should. But what he says is that a lot of times, listening and understanding these feelings and having empathy of what the other person, it's more than just hearing with your ears. And it's really understanding the whole person. So a lot of times, the things that you need to hear in these kinds of conflict situations, you can't hear these things with your ears. You have to understand them with your whole mind, with your whole, everything that you are seeing about this person, and the things that are going on even behind the words that they're saying are going to be so important to really empathizing with this person that is coming to you. Because just like you and I, every single person has unmet needs and they have feelings. And so behind the words that they're saying, and even though they might be hurtful, there is something inside of them that is hurting, and that they have some unmet needs in their hearts that to be honest, when they come to you with these issues, they're coming and they're asking for help. And we never see it this way, because our natural response is like, oh, they're coming and they're criticizing me and they're telling me how bad I am and how I need to change. But what's really happening is that they are coming and they're asking for help. They want you to help change a situation, to change something that's going on that can make their life better. And so if we can just take a moment and think for ourselves and start to change our way of thinking from seeing that people coming to us with conflict are just trying to fight us and to make us worse and to tell us how bad we are. But what's really happening is that they have feelings that are hurting and they have needs that are unmet. And because they are coming to you, that means that they know that you can do something to change it. And so I think that this is really cool, and I think it'll start us off really, really well as we talk about empathy, and as we talk about how do we receive with empathy when other people come to us with issues. So I want to start us off with this story. So there's Rachel and I during quarantine have really taken up the hobby of movie watching. So call it a hobby, call it not, whatever you want to call it. But I have loved the X-Men series. We are currently watching X-Men right now, and it is so good. And I just love superhero movies, so it's so good. And one of the main characters in the X-Men his name is Professor X. And if you know anything about X-Men, he's the bald guy who rides around in a wheelchair, and he can like read people's minds and whatever. And so Professor X, what's really cool about him and why I think I really love his character is that he always has hope. And a lot of the other characters don't. They're always like, oh man, this is a terrible situation. Like, oh man, these people that we're up against, they're terrible. They're never going to be good. But for some reason, Professor X always has hope. And he always sees even his worst enemies as people who he can see hope in. And he can see that, okay, well, they're fighting us, they're trying to kill us, but I have hope. I have hope that they're going to become good. I have hope that something is going to change in their heart that is going to make them turn around and come to good. And so there's this guy, Magneto, and Magneto is like Professor X's worst enemy. And there was this moment where Professor X... Just watch the clip.
There's so much more to you than you know. Not just pain, and anger. It was good too, I felt it.
He sees hope. And what's really cool is that this isn't just something that is a superpower, because his superpower isn't seeing hope. His superpower is to be able to read their minds. But oftentimes you'll see him, every time he reads someone's mind, he's almost always crying. And you got to ask yourself, Professor X, why are you always crying when you're reading these people's minds? And what happens is that what he sees is not just what's on the outside. He's not just judging them based on what they're doing or how they're acting or how many people they've killed or how many bad things that they've done. He is seeing what is inside of them. And this is the word empathy, right? He's empathizing. He is seeing the pain and the hurt that is behind all of those words, behind all of those actions that they do. And so as we talk about empathy, I think this is such an awesome picture for us to see, man, this guy, Professor X, maybe he can read their minds, but that's the superpower. It's not the superpower to have empathy, and that's something that he has, and that's something that you have, that's something that I have, but we most of the time choose not to empathize with what people are saying because we don't want to see past the bad. We just want to judge them because it helps us feel better about ourselves. It helps us feel like, oh, I'm a good person and they're not. And so we don't want to see past this hurt, past the words that are happening, because maybe sometimes we even feel hurt. But I think what the challenge for us is that we need to have empathy, and we need to decide whether or not we are going to have empathy towards the person who is coming to us and bringing up a conflict. And this is hard. This is honestly really difficult, and it's going to take a lot of practice for us because we're not used to that. What we're used to is we're used to fighting back. We're used to someone shooting and we shoot back. With their words, we shoot back with our words. It's a loud truck. I don't know if you guys can hear that. But that's what we're used to. And so if we're going to try to do something different, if we're going to try to do what James 1:19 is asking us to do, to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, then we have to try to do our best to empathize with the person who is coming to us with an issue. Because like we said earlier, they are coming to us and they might seem angry, they might seem upset, they might be hurting, and those are all things that are deep down inside, but maybe the words that are coming out when they approach us, maybe the actions that they do when they approach us, they don't seem very kind. They don't seem like they want us to help, but that really is what's happening here. And I love this picture of Professor X because it reminds me of Jesus, and it reminds me of him who saw how, man, us as humanity are people who are so broken, who are so lost, who maybe do bad things or hurt people in a lot of different ways. But what's special about Jesus is that he looks at us and he doesn't say, well, that's not my problem. He looks at us and he says, no, I'm going to insert myself into their problem. I'm going to jump in and try to do my best to love them and care for them and save them because they need a savior and they need someone to help them. And so this is our call as Christians. We are going to try to follow Jesus in this. We're going to have empathy towards people, even our enemies, just like we were God's enemies. He still came down and he loved us because he had empathy for us. And that's why Hebrews 4, like we read, it says that Jesus is the high priest and he is not someone who is unable to empathize, but he is able to empathize with our weakness because he's been tempted in every way, but he never sinned. And so I love that picture. I love that we have Jesus to look to when we want to know, how do we have empathy? How do we love people well, even when they are our enemies? And that is exactly what Jesus did for us. And so last week we had 4 steps. This week we're going to have 4 steps as well. So last week, 4 steps were how do we approach a conflict if we're the ones who are bringing it up. This week, the 4 steps that we're going to talk about are how do we receive with empathy? How do we receive conflict? If we're on the receiving end, if someone is coming to us and telling us, oh my gosh, Kika, why are you always on TikTok like we talked about last week? How do I, as Kika, in this conversation, receive with empathy? And so I want to give us a quick refresher. Let's go back and watch our conflict from last week just to give us a good reminder and an example as we talk through how do we respond with empathy. So first, let's take a second to watch this example.
Kika, I feel like you're so childish. Why are you always on TikTok?
Yeah, I am a child. Where's my binky? Oh my gosh, you're so annoying. Just let me do what I want to do. It's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with me being on my phone, so just let me be. So that was the bad example. That's what most of us probably do, but we shouldn't do. And so what we're going to talk through here is how do especially me as Kika, who responded not in an empathetic way at all, but responding by being defensive, by being aggressive, by being really maybe even childish. How was I supposed to respond in that such situation, and how do I do it with empathy? Okay, so 4 steps. Last week we talked about 4 steps. This week 4 steps, and a couple of them are even almost the same thing. And so the first thing that I should have done when I heard this conflict coming to me is just to breathe. When we are in a situation, in a tense situation where someone is coming to us and they're yelling at us, or they're criticizing us or tearing us down, our natural response is to fight back. That's our natural response. Or for some of us, it's really to run away. That's the whole fight or flight thing. But what we're going to do here is what we need to do first is to breathe. And that's why James 1 says we have to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. Because if we're quick to do anything other than just listen and breathe and not respond and not yell and not be frustrated, then if we're breathing, if we're just taking a deep breath, that is going to set us up for success for steps 2, 3, and 4. But the first thing that I really challenge us to all do is to take a deep breath. So take a deep breath. Don't make a scene with your deep breath. Just breathe. Breathe, calm yourself down, because your blood pressure is going to start to rise, but you need to breathe, stay calm. And that's going to lead us to step 2. So, and I love this because I tried my best to make these rhyme so that we can remember them. So the first step is to breathe, and the second step is to receive. So James tells us in James 1:19, he says, be quick to listen. And so what we have to do when we hear what they're saying, we breathe, calm ourselves down, and then we receive, and we receive with empathy. So what this means is that we are going to try to do our best to listen, be quick to listen. And as we listen, we are receiving from them what they are saying. But like we said, we have to receive with empathy. And if you remember back to Professor X, when he sees this person, when he sees what's going on in their head, he really sees something a lot deeper. He sees pain, he sees hurt, he sees unmet needs, and this is what we have to do. I know you don't have any superpowers, but we all have empathy. And so as we receive, we're going to try to receive 2 things. And this goes back to last week, because last week our steps were observation without evaluation, then we have to express feelings, and then we have to connect feelings to needs. Those were the first 3 steps. Now, as the person who is receiving the conflict and receiving words from somebody else, remember step 1 last week, observation. So Kika, in this situation that we just watched, Kika is going to observe what Rachel is saying. So I'm observing, and what I'm trying to observe and receive with empathy are these 2 things, which are the steps 2 and 3 from last time. I'm going to try to receive feelings, and I'm going to try to receive needs, unmet needs. So I'm going to try to receive from what Rachel said. What is Rachel feeling? What are some of her feelings, and what are some of her needs? And so I want you to think. What do you think are some of the feelings and the needs that Rachel has in this previous video?
Kika, I feel like you're so childish. Why are you always on TikTok?
All right, so what do you think? What is she feeling, and what does she need? And so if you remember last week, you kind of get a cheat sheet, because you know what she really was feeling and what she was needing. And so if I don't know this, if I haven't watched the video from last week, I have to try to think, okay, why is Rachel coming with this request or this argument? And so what does she feel, and what does she need? And so if I'm thinking, I think behind this, I think Rachel is feeling sad, or maybe she's feeling frustrated. And if those are the 2 things that she's maybe feeling, what are the needs that are not being met that caused her to bring up this conversation? And if I were to think, and maybe you think as well, what are the needs? I think the needs are that she wants quality time, that she really wants to spend time together, but she's not getting that. And so And so those are the two things that I'm observing. I'm observing her feelings and I'm observing her needs. And that's what we need to do as step 2. So we receive, and we receive with empathy her feelings, or the feelings of the person that you're arguing with, and their needs. So our first step was to breathe, our second step was to receive, and our third step is to conceive. I love it, right? Breathe, receive, conceive. And I picked this word specifically. I know the word conceive is like reminds you of giving birth, but that's actually why I picked it. Because think back, James 1:19, he says, be quick to listen, slow to speak. How long does it take to give birth to a baby? If any of you know, I have some friends who have literally been in the hospital for days giving birth. It takes a long time, and this is so important to this because as we've processed those things, we've processed what we've received, just make sure before you speak that you are conceiving the words, that they are going to come out slowly because you've thought through them. And so as you think through, okay, what have I received? What do I see in this person? What am I observing? Their feelings and their needs. Then I can start to say, okay, Rachel, and then I'll say what I think is happening, and then I'll say what I've processed. But it's really important, and we'll get back to what I'll say, but it's really important to say the words that come out of our mouth, we have to say them in a way that is not going to hurt the other person, because they're already coming to you and they're frustrated and they're hurt, and they are very sensitive to, and you know this because you've been there yourself, they're sensitive to any sarcasm that you're going to give, they're sensitive to any criticism that you're going to give, and sometimes they're going to misread what you're saying as those things. And so say them, conceive the words slowly, process how you're going to say it, the tone of your voice. Sometimes, man, like, it's just so important, just the tone of your voice, because it can come off sarcastic, it can come off as you're criticizing them. So make sure that you're saying it in a way that is not, and it's also not, it's not a know-it-all voice. It's like, oh, I know what you're thinking. Oh, I know what you're feeling. No, like, ask it and say these things in a way that, like, you are showing them that you are trying to make sure you understand what they're telling you. And so the words that you say are really just a clarifier, and you're trying to dig deeper into what they are bringing to you. So how would this look? So if I've processed, okay, Rachel, it seems like she's sad or frustrated, and those reasons are pointing to the need that she wants to spend quality time together. How do I conceive those words? Well, take a look at this example of how I try to do this in a way that's not criticizing and it's not sarcastic, and it's really just trying to uncover what is really happening behind Rachel's words through empathy. So check this out. Rachel, are you feeling sad because you'd like to spend more quality time together? What a great response, right? So now that we've said that, right, now that you've responded and you've conceived these words in a way that is caring and loving, is the conversation over? No, it's not. And so that's what brings us to our last step. So we've got breathe, receive with empathy, conceive, and then the fourth step is repeat. I know it doesn't rhyme, but can't get them all. It's repeat, and that's why it's this one is really important, because then they'll tell you, maybe they'll say, yes, that is what I'm feeling, and then they'll respond with something else. And maybe as Rachel hears me telling her these things, maybe she'll say something like this. Watch this.
Yeah, I do. I feel like you spend more time on your phone than you do with me.
All right, so now that we heard what she's responding, and she actually agreed with what I said. She said, yes, I do feel what you just said. And now that she's said that, I don't just end the conversation there and be like, okay, well, then let's do this. I continue to keep asking the same questions, or I'll go back and I'll receive again. So I receive what she just said, and then I'll process and I'll ask myself, okay, I'm trying to observe her feelings and her needs. And so in this past situation, what is she feeling? What do you think she's feeling? I think she's feeling worried, and even the tone of her voice sounds worried. And so why do I think she's worried? And that'll give me the need. I think she's worried and she needs quality time. And so maybe in response to that, once again, I will conceive, and I'll conceive something like this. So, are you feeling worried that I would spend all night on my phone and not spend any quality time with you? So there it is again. And here's the thing, Rachel might say yes, or she might say no. She might agree with the feelings and the needs that I think she has, but she might say no. And even if she says no, that's okay. But what you're noticing here is that we are now having a level-headed conversation. We're not screaming at each other. We're not yelling at each other. We're not tearing each other down. I'm just observing her feelings and her needs, and she's responding to those things. And we are doing it out of empathy. I'm doing it because I love her, and I see a need, an unmet need in her, and feelings for her that are hurt and that need someone to love and care and nourish them. And so that is what you can do, and that is what we're all called to do as we listen. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Now, next week we're probably going to talk about anger and how do we is anger okay, and is it something that we should use in family, and if so, how do we do it well? But as we think through those 4 steps, I want you this week to challenge yourself to do those 4 steps. So I want you to think right now, what are the 4 steps? Ready? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Did you get them all? I don't know, because I can't hear you. But if you didn't, here they are once more. And this is the challenge for the week. The challenge for the week is when someone comes to you with an argument or with a fight, or they're upset about something, and they come to you saying things, the first thing that you have to do, step 1, take a breath, breathe. Step 2, receive with empathy. Remember, Professor X, bald guy, trying to see through their mind and seeing the pain that they feel. So breathe, receive, process, conceive, say the words that you found in receive, the feelings and the needs, and then repeat. And do it over and over again, and try to find the needs and the feelings that the person that is coming to you has, and say, okay, I'm not gonna just fight back because I love them, and I want this to be fruitful, and I want our relationship to be better. Now, some of you on the couch might be sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds like the biggest waste of time I have ever heard. That's gonna take so long to just process and ask them what they're feeling and what their needs are, and I'm not a psychiatrist. It's okay. It takes practice, it takes time. And man, I've been trying to do this with Rachel these last couple of weeks, and it's not easy, but it works. And literally last week, we had this conversation, and Rachel and I were having a little conflict, and she said, okay, I want you to use your 4 steps from last week. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. But it was so helpful, it really was. And so I want you to use all 4 of these steps. Breathe, receive, conceive, repeat this week when someone comes to you. And if you think it's a waste of time, listen to this. Someone did a study on this, and they found that people who use this method actually cut down their conflict time by 50%. That's 50%. It goes 50% faster to have a conversation, a conflict, using these steps than just arguing all day and not getting anywhere. And again, just like we said last week, this will have longer lasting impacts because we're getting to the root of the issue, not just the outside, the frustrations, the anger and all that, but we're really getting to why is that person angry? What are the feelings that are hurting? What are the needs that are unmet? And that way we can know how we can love them better and care for them better. So I love you guys. So grateful that you have come along for this conversation, and we'll see you guys next week.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Lord, I thank you that we're still able to hear a sermon weekly through Kika, God. And I thank you for just blessing him, God, and that we're still able to just connect with each other and be blessed by your word, God. I thank you that we have the chance to hear it through Kika, and even though we're not able to see each other right now, I thank you that we're still able to connect with each other, check in on each other, and make sure we're all safe, Lord. I just ask you that as we go on through this pandemic, Lord, that you just keep us blessed and safe, Lord, and that all families around us in the community, God, are just healthy and are still able to connect with each other and still be able to continue our whole journey with you, God, and keep growing our relationship with you, Lord. I thank you. In your name I pray. Amen.
Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate you coming, and we hope that you enjoyed all of these sermons that we've been having at home. If you want to join us for some more discussions, we do Friday night Zoom calls at 7:30, and they're super fun, and I really enjoy them, and I'm sure you guys would enjoy them too. So if you guys would like to come to those, we split into middle school and high school, and it's always a lot of fun. So yeah, we'll see you there.